Very few artists in history changed their entire style so radically as Gustav Klimt, an Austrian-born painter of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In some of my videos, I already talked about how changes in tastes made or broke some artists' careers. Think of John William Godward, for example, who painted neoclassical paintings when nobody liked his style anymore. Or how Henri Rousseau became a cult hero for the young generation of artists who emerged in the early 20th century, such as Pablo Picasso. In my opinion, Gustav Klimt was one of the most talented painters in history, and I'm not the only one who thought so. In 1888, he was presented with the Golden Order of Merit by Emperor Franz Joseph I of his native Austria. Then, around the time he reached the age of 30, a tragedy happened in the young man's life that changed the course of his career indefinitely. What happened to Gustav Klimt for him to transform his art so radically, and why was this likely the best decision he could have ever made? In this video, you'll learn everything about how Gustav Klimt reinvented himself at exactly the right time in art history. The story of Gustav Klimt starts on July 14, 1862, when he was born in Baumgart, an area now part of the metropolitan area of Vienna. He was the second of 7 children, and several of his siblings showed artistic talent from a young age. Especially Gustav and his brother Ernst inherited artistic talent from their father, who was also named Ernst. Ernst Klimt the Elder was a gold engraver, and although that sounds like a high-paying job, the family lived in poverty throughout Gustav's childhood and adolescence. Both Gustav and his younger brother Ernst enrolled at the school that later became the University of Applied Arts of Vienna. Being accepted at this school was no easy feat, so it clearly indicates that both brothers were extremely talented. Nothing we see in the paintings of his later period makes us assume that he studied architectural painting for 7 years between 1876 and 1883. Just like about every other aspiring young Austrian painter of the 19th century, Gustav Klimt's idol at the time was Hans Makart. Although he died young at the age of 44, Makart raised the bar to incredible heights during his career. Just look at his ultimate masterpiece titled The Entry of Charles V into Antwerp, for example. Together with their friend Franz Mach, the brothers Gustav and Ernst started a company around 1880 with the aim of attracting wealthy patrons. The Künstler Company of Artists, as they referred to it, quickly started getting jobs to paint murals inside Vienna's newly constructed buildings. These included the Kunsthistorisches Museum and the Burgtheater, some of the city's most beautiful feats of architecture. Both of these structures are located on the Ring Road, which was built to replace the medieval city walls in the 19th century. During the 1880s, Gustav Klimt, his brother Ernst, and their friend Franz thought that they could spend the rest of their lives painting murals in their home city. This feeling was reinforced when Gustav Klimt was given the Golden Order of Merit by Emperor Franz Joseph I of Austria in 1888. Apparently, the Austrian emperor gave this award because he greatly admired the murals he painted at the Burgtheater in Vienna. Hans Makart died in 1884, and by then, Gustav Klimt was considered to be the leading academic painter of his generation. Then, in 1892, at the height of his career, both his father Ernst and his younger brother Ernst died. It was a great personal tragedy, and the 30-year-old Gustav also became financially responsible for his large family. As the 20th century approached, new styles of art were being embraced by the general public, including symbolism and art nouveau. This was around the time that he gradually changed his style and started integrating symbolism into his paintings. When he started painting nude figures with a veiled sense of eroticism into his murals, he started getting criticism as well from the academic community. This was especially the case for his ceiling paintings at the University of Vienna, which were referred to as pornographic by some art critics. Unfortunately, these ceiling paintings were destroyed during World War II, but it became the final public commission he received. This only added fuel to his transformation, and because of this, he became a founding member of the Vienna secession movement in 1897. In the fascinating government-funded building, numerous exhibitions were held where young, emerging modern artists could display their work. By 1898, he had completely emerged into the new wave of modernism, of which he eventually became the main exponent. It's also Gustav Klimt who painted the group symbol known as Pallas Athena, the ancient Greek goddess of wisdom and art. The way in which he painted Pallas Athena set the tone for the rest of his career during the first decades of the 20th century. Now here's something intriguing. Around 1894, Gustav Klimt painted some of the finest portraits of upper-class Viennese women you'll ever come across. The naturalist style he used was executed to perfection, as these portraits are almost photographic, which is quite incredible. Less than a decade later, he created one of his most famous works titled the Beethoven Frieze. It was a celebration of the 75th year of German composer Ludwig van Beethoven's death and was displayed at the 14th Vienna Secession exhibition in 1902. This huge work of art is still on display at the Vienna Secession building today, and it highlights the artist's remarkable change in style. He completely embraced the Art Nouveau style that became popular, and it certainly helped him financially too. During the first decade of the 20th century, he painted several portraits of women in a distinctive style, often decorated with gold leaf. The epitome of his so-called gold period was his world-famous painting titled The Kiss, a work that was originally titled The Lovers. Although this hasn't been confirmed, this might be an allegorical self-portrait together with Emilie Flügge, Gustav's lifelong partner. I personally think that the woman was one of his models known as Red Hilda, a woman who appeared in several of his paintings, including this one. Now let me tell you about an intriguing anecdote that highlights why Gustav Klimt was such an influential figure in art history. It also explains why the Austrian painter made the best decision of his life when he reinvented himself by moving away from academic art in the late 19th century. Gustav Klimt managed to use his radical new style of painting to attract wealthy patrons, especially Jewish women. One of these was Adele Bauer, the daughter of a Jewish Austrian banker whom he already met during the late 1890s. Together with her husband Ferdinand Bloch, who was also a banker and sugar manufacturer, she acquired several portraits from Klimt. In 1907, he completed a painting titled Portrait of Adele Bloch Bauer I. It's referred to as such because he also painted a second version in 1912. This painting was stolen by the Nazis in 1941 from Adele's husband Ferdinand, who had fled to Switzerland just before the war started. After the war, it was housed at the Galerie Belvedere, but a descendant of Ferdinand filed a claim in 1998 against the gallery. After a legal battle that lasted nearly 8 years, the painting was returned to the Bloch family in 2006 and put for sale that same year. It was purchased by art collector Ronald Lauder to serve as the ultimate masterpiece of his museum called the Neue Galerie, which opened in 2001 in New York City. He paid an incredible $135 million for the painting, which was the highest price paid for any work of art at the time in 2006. So what about the portrait of Adele Bloch Bauer II, the second portrait that Klimt painted of Adele? American talk show host Oprah Winfrey bought this painting the same year in 2006 for $88 million. She put it for sale just 6 years later in 2012 and managed to sell it for an astounding $150 million to an unidentified buyer. Yes, the value of Gustav Klimt's paintings today highlights how pivotal his transformation was in art history. Just before the war started in 1911, Klimt traveled to Rome and won the first prize in the World Exhibition with his allegorical work titled Life and Death. At the time, the background featured the same gold leaf as he used in many of his portraits, but he changed it in 1915 following the outbreak of World War I. Gustav Klimt was one of the many unlucky people who survived the war but died from complications of the Spanish flu in 1918, aged 55. His final painting was titled Lady with a Fan, and it serves as an ode for his love of the female body and his lifelong interest in Asian art, both constants in his extensive oeuvre. Many of his paintings remained unfinished, but the ones he left behind became some of the most sought-after artworks in modern times.